When I think of bugs, glitches, and mistakes in Gen 1 Pokemon, my mind always goes to the obvious ones. Missing No, Mew under the truck, and this little invisible-ass PC in the corner of this hotel. You know, the classics. These were the handful of glitches that were so popular that my 7-year-old self had heard about them through word of mouth from my friends. But after doing a bit of research, I discovered that these games had a lot more issues than I thought they did. In this video, I'll mostly be covering move-specific glitches with a few bugged mechanics and general poor decisions made when creating Pokemon Red and Blue. They might be nothing new or flashy at this point, but I hope you'll enjoy this little showcase from some of my childhood favorites. Let's open the floodgates with Toxic. Everyone knows that Toxic is basically just advanced poison, as invented by Dark Souls in 2006, 10 years after Pokemon's release. Basically, in the game's background, a value goes up by 1 every turn that Toxic is in effect, and then that value is multiplied by Toxic's base damage of 1/16 of the target's max health, rounded down. So if the target has 100 max HP, then they'll take 16 damage the first turn, then 32 the next, and so on. This is where the problem comes in. You see, Toxic buildup was also linked to the Poison, Burn, and Leech Seed statuses. This meant a few things. Firstly, if a Pokemon was affected by both Toxic and Leech Seed, the buildup from before would increase for each of those statuses ticking, meaning that the counter would leap forward 2 times per turn instead of 1. The second big issue with Toxic was when a Pokemon cured it with the Rest move. When the Pokemon tries to take a big beef and nap, the Toxic status would be cured, but the counter wouldn't reset and would remain in the background. So if the target was poisoned, seeded, or burnt after this interaction occurred, the new status would inflict unexpected amounts of damage. My next tirade is going to be about the slew of bugs that are associated with the Substitute move. Basically, Substitute is a move that cuts into the user's HP for 25% of its max health in order to create a dummy as a new target. This dummy was supposed to not be able to be affected by any status, and basically took any damage instead of the user. Unfortunately, Substitute seemingly sacrifices some of the game's code too, because there's a host of problems that stem from it. Say that you and your opponent both have Substitutes up. Then say that your Pokemon becomes confused, maybe due to the sheer amount of bodies on the field or something. It then hurts itself due to confusion, which affects the opponent's Substitute. If the opponent doesn't have a Substitute up, the confusion damage does nothing. Substitute also tends to break or change the secondary effects of most attacks in general. Examples of this include Hyper Beam not needing to recharge, multi-strike moves like Fury Swipes ending early, and recoil-based moves such as Double Edge or sacrificial moves like Self-Destruct not dealing the damage to its user. Also, if you created a Substitute when your Pokemon had exactly 25% health left, it would crumple into a pile as it uses all of its remaining health to lmao itself into a dummy. But my favorite part of Substitute is this. If your opponent has a Substitute up or is minimized, and you go to check the status of one of your Pokemon, their Pokemon transforms into a copy of the sprite you just viewed, except with more limbs and less chromosome. There's a relatively in-depth explanation for this, but the somewhat simplified version of it is that the area where the Substitute/minimize sprite is loaded is in the same space as the player's Pokemon in the status screen. This was due primarily to the VRAM limitations at the time, and caused the devs to reuse the same functions to recall the Substitute/minimize animations on the player's turn. Unfortunately, they missed the part of the variable that was defined on the opponent's turn, but undefined on the player's turn. This ultimately causes the Substimize sprite to move over to the player's side, and the previously displayed status sprite to be decompressed and inverted, and then placed in the opposite order, resulting in a mess of limbs. Reflect and Light Screen are pretty useful techniques that double the user's defense and special defense respectively. Overall, they're good moves to have, unless you already have too much of the stat that you're trying to double. Basically, if you had 512 or more of the stat, then doubling it to 1024 or more would cause an overflow, and roll back over into very tiny defense numbers. Simply put, your roided out Cloyster has no business trying to double up on its defense. If the stat was exactly 512 or 513, then it's set to 0, which causes the game to freeze upon damage calculation. This behavior also happens with any instance where an attacking stat is higher than 255. In order to calculate the amount of damage in a single bite, both the attacking and the defending stats are divided by 4. If the defending stat is 3 or lower, the value becomes 0, causing the game to try to divide by 0. This meant that if your monster of a Kingler goes all out on the tiniest Weedle boy, it might just cause your game to lock up. I'd call it Weedle's last-ditch effort to try to win. Focus Energy is actually a debuff in Gen 1 games. Because critical hits were programmed incorrectly, they occurred 4 times the amount which they were supposed to occur without the aid of any particular buff. So when Focus Energy or the Dire Hit item were used, they actually divided the chance to crit by 4 instead of quadrupling it, because they operated based off of how crit was supposed to work. And while we're talking about critical hits, a noteworthy aspect of this mechanic is that it actually does not benefit from stat increases. This meant that a critical hit is actually prone to do less damage than a normal hit that's been boosted by a handful of swords dances. MultiTurn moves are probably some of the most commonly affected moves that fall victim to bugs. There are a variety of moves which are all affected in different ways in different situations. For example, if a Pokemon begins to charge a Solar Beam or Abide, or begins to rage or thrash about and then is put to sleep or frozen, they are unable to do anything if their condition is cured by a haze move. Then there's moves that are vulnerable to underflowing, which include Clamp, Fire Spin, Bind, and Wrap. While these moves were ridiculous in and of themselves due to their spammable nature, they also created a few other issues. For example, if you use the last PP of one of these moves when your opponent goes to switch out, the move is used on the new Pokemon, and the PP underflows to 63, and winds up permanently giving the move the effect of 3 PP ups if it hadn't had any applied to it already. In addition to this oddity, these moves negate the recharge requirement of Hyper Beam, even if the move misses. In other words, as long as you're attempting a Wrap move, your opponent can fire off hot load after load of Hyper Beam magic. On top of all of that, the Dig and Fly moves can be inadvertently exploited with Paralysis and Confusion. If a Pokemon takes to the skies or tunnels underground, and then skips their turn due to Paralysis or just being baffled about life, they just stay there. Oh, they can still attack, but they sure can't be hit themselves, unless by a Swift or Abide. The only way they'll come down or up is by successfully using a charging move such as Skull Bash or Solar Beam, switching out, or by using the same Dig/Fly move again. Now let's touch a bit on glitch moves. Glitch moves are moves that are completely unintentional and can only be accessed by cheats or through their namesake, glitches. There are many glitch moves that have been discovered and cataloged across the years. The only ones that I had ever encountered when I was younger were associated with Missing No. So it surprised me that there were this many moves and that there were several different ways of acquiring them onto your various Pokemon. One such way is through Ditto, specifically by swapping moves around after he's transformed. Another way is by thawing from a frozen status before making an attack. This is an interesting way to use a glitch move because the only way to become unfrozen is to either use a recovery item, which takes up your turn anyways, or to take fire damage. So if you were frozen by your opponent and then unfrozen with a fire move, you would unleash whichever attack was queued last, even if it was a different Pokemon from your party's move. If no move was selected, then you unleashed a glitch attack. Before I wrap up this video, I want to share a list of some of the poor decisions that were implemented into these games. These aren't necessarily bugs or glitches, they're more things that make you ask yourself, why is that in there? I'll start with my favorite one. If you deposit all of your Pokemon into your PC except for your fainted ones, you can close the PC, walk 3 steps, and promptly black out. Another issue is that of the all-knowing AI. No matter which Pokemon you switch into, the AI adjusts to the new threat. If the enemy Hitmonchan is facing down your mighty Poliwag and you switch out for your Diglett because you think, oh, he's going to use Thunder Punch, and my Diglett is immune to that. I've got disheartening news for you because that sentient ground bump is getting hit with the frostiest ice punch this side of Kanto. You know how you need to grab the Sylph Scope in order to not get grabbed by the ghoulies at Lavender Town's big-ass tower? Specifically, you needed it to identify the spooky
I choose Marowak!
Marowak that guards the top and won't let you pass otherwise. Well, at least that was the intention. You could just give it a Pokédoll and scoot along. Still hammering away at enemy legendaries' health pools in order to get that 1 pixel of health and improve the catch rate? Well, unfortunately, the catch rate only increases until you hit 1/3 of max HP. Any lower and the effect is the same, and even then the rate on legendaries only improves by less than 2% with Ultra Balls. If you want the big boy percentage increase, you want to throw them into the fridge or pump some NyQuil into them. And last but not least, I may have mentioned the AI being all-knowing, but we're talking high intelligence, low wisdom. meaning that the AI definitely knows that your level 12 Mankey is weak to psychic moves, but can't understand that spamming barrier and agility probably isn't going to do the job as well as a nice and gentle slam from their level 62 Dragon Knight. And that about wraps things up for this video. Did it cover all of the bugs and glitches across these games? No. Not even close. If you wanted to explore just how broken these games are for yourself, I encourage you to check out the links in the description. I had zero idea about most of these before doing so myself, and it's helped me revisit one of my childhood favorites with a new perspective. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it as always. And don't be too surprised if the next video is a 45-minute rant about why Donkey Kong Country 3 is the best one, or a 2-minute shitpost. And if you want to catch me in the meantime, I remember to stream stuff on Twitch sometimes at odd hours usually. Have a good one.